"It's the bear," she said. "Your bear. Do you want to eat it or bury it?" I felt myself jerk backwards at the thought of eating the monster that had killed my sister. "Forgive me," she said, wide-eyed. "I shouldn't have asked." She left me to take care of the carcass, and I closed the curtains so I didn't catch any glimpse of what followed. I cursed myself for a coward, but it felt marvelous to have someone protecting me. I jumped at the sound of a knock on the door and wondered who was calling the Valiant household. It had to be someone familiar enough to show up unannounced, but reserved enough to knock. They knocked again, louder, and I realized that, apart from me, the house was empty. There was no one else to answer it. I hurried downstairs. Barnaby was lifting his fist for another bout with the door when I opened it. "It's true," he said, twisting an ancient top hat in both hands. "You're well." "Well enough," I said, automatically cradling my weaker hand. "What can I do for you?" "We have a healer," he said, speaking too loudly for such a mild statement. "Good," I said. "He's sick." "Ah," I said. "You'd like me to see if I can help him, or perhaps the people he'd normally be visiting?" Barnaby nodded, flushed with relief. "And you're nothing but my messenger," I added, "which means that if you happen to pick up some healing skills, no one will suspect your knack for healing is because of being a soul eater, or a soul seer for that matter." He nodded again, flashing me a grateful glance. "I'll take you to the people that need healing," he said, "and you can show me what to do." "I'm not trained," I said feebly. "What if I hurt someone or teach you incorrectly?" He shrugged. "Trying's better than dying." "I wouldn't put it like that." "We've a match house up the valley a ways," he said. "The girls are getting fussy jaw, but their da says it ain't." "Oh, good," I said weakly. "Disfigured, smelly, and dying." He grinned happily, and I couldn't tell if he was excited about playing the hero, angering the factory owner, or getting a chance to see a nice gory medical condition up close. I went to the door of what had obviously once been a house rather than a factory. 2 chimneys protruded from the roof, and many of the windows were black with coal dust. I put on my most respectable face and knocked. A florid-faced man appeared to me, squinting at the bright sunlight. "Good morning, sir," I said. "My name is—" "Are you the new great one?" he asked. "There aren't any bodies for you here." "Actually," I said, "my concern is for the living." "Ah," he said, "you're one of them that has a sideline business in keeping bodies alive." I hadn't noticed the obvious conflict of interest until then, so I simply agreed. "Nose around if you like, but I'll not pay for any quackery," he said, showing Barnaby and I into the factory proper. "Very well," I said, feeling warm inside and out that I didn't have any pressing need for money, since I was clearly not going to be paid, but I knew I'd eat well all the same. For once I could be open-handed. He slapped a short-haired girl as we passed by her overheated perch in front of a coal burner 3 times my height. She flinched away before looking around for instructions. Our host drew a finger across his throat and she nodded obediently, opening the burner's iron door with a bent rod and barely blinking at the wall of heat that rushed out to hit us all. She used a longer rod to kill the flames, spreading them wide and then adding bucketfuls of water that hissed and steamed like angry dragons. "Thank you kindly," he said. We moved onto the working floor where 3 more girls wearing leather aprons examined tiny sticks of wood and dipped them in a series of bottles before carefully laying them out on waxed paper. Matches. Their father took up a great iron hammer and belted the near side of the engine, ringing it like a church bell so every one of his children could hear. He signalled them to come, and they came. They lined up in a row, putting out their hands for inspection and opening their mouths without waiting to be told. Their hands were blotchy with scarring, and one girl had 2 fingers amputated, whether by accident or because of some other condition, I couldn't tell. The oldest had a crushed face and could barely open her mouth. I yelled over the noise, asking to look closer at her face. Her father dragged her to the closest window, which was shut. I swallowed down my longing to open the window and smell something other than the rotten egg stink of the factory. The girl tilted her head so I could clearly see how the right side of her jaw was caved in. I touched it, hesitantly at first, and then harder, eventually poking her as roughly as her stoker sister had prodded the fire. When I stepped back, she curtsied and went back to her place in line. All 3 still held their mouths open, like sideshow clowns. "Shut your mouths," I said, and mimed it with one hand. They obeyed. "Well?" asked the father. "It's very grim indeed," I told him, and hoped he wasn't a medical man himself. "The miasma here is eating away at their bones and will kill them all by the time they're full grown." He paled, taking me at my word. "What can I do?" "The treatment is simple," I said. "Open every window in the house from dawn until dusk. Even in winter, make sure they all sit by a window, breathing deeply, at least 1 full hour by the clock each day." He looked both relieved and suspicious. "And every time there's an accidental fire, they must all thoroughly wash their hands afterwards." He was still nodding, so I decided to push my luck. They'll need to douse any burnt limbs several times and then go by the river to wash for a full hour by the clock. "Every single time?" he said. "If you want them to keep their fingers, then yes," I said. "And the little one at the fire needs a full leather suit with gloves, as well as a large window behind her, fixed open throughout the year, unless it's raining." He frowned, and I knew he was thinking of the expense. "I almost forgot," I said. "Each of the young girls is too far gone to be entirely healed, but the infection has not yet spread to you. Be very careful not to let your skin come into contact with theirs, even through the medium of clothing. They must be kept utterly separated from you, or you'll be in grave danger. He nodded vigorously. Utterly separate, don't touch them, even through the medium of clothing. I understand. Are you sure I'm not infected? I found you in time, I said, with all the gravity I could muster. The stoker herself showed me out, giving me a gap to smile to make up for being too shy to speak. Is their skin really infectious? Asked Barnaby the second we were out of earshot. He beats them, I said. That's how the eldest lost her jaw. It wasn't Fossy Jaw at all, he asked, too stunned to continue walking until I reminded him we should keep moving. I shook my head. You can't get Fossy Jaw without phosphorus. He's using sulphur, sugar and arsenic. It's more likely to burn the house down than kill the girls themselves, assuming they have the sense not to drink the arsenic.